Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Orange Crush podcast. Today, our Clemson, Virginia preview with the voice of the Cavaliers, John Freeman. You can hear him on the play-by-play call for this weekend's matchup with Clemson. And we'll be talking, I'm sure, a ton about the guy at the top of your screen, Tony Elliott, today, now head coach of the Virginia Cavaliers. John, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining the show.
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Is Coach Elliott a boxer at Clemson? I've never seen that photo before. That's something unique. I've never seen him don the boxing gloves. I guess it was a running backs drill trying to force some ball security, but you dug deep for that one.
I did. We were trying to find a themed picture. For this, and so I saw Tony Elliott with a boxing glove, and I was like, how can I make a really bad pun out of this at some point in the show? So I chose that picture, and it'll be there soon. But John, diving into this matchup with Virginia and Clemson, obviously the big storyline is going to be about Tony Elliott's return to Virginia. But the thing that really stands out to me is what this program has done in such a short time under Elliott's tenure. Obviously, he's dealt with a lot in his first couple of years, but this year that feels like they're starting to not just win ball games, but really look balanced on the field as a whole. Just what has this year been like with year three with Tony Elliott, and just how has this Virginia program evolved under his leadership?
Yeah, this year's been, by all indications, much more successful. I mean, the record indicates that. We already have more wins this year than we did in any of the previous two seasons. And this team has shown a lot of resilience. Every single ACC game that we have played, we played 3 of them, been down by double digits in the second half. And we've won 2 of those 3 and actually came back and erased that double-digit deficit against Louisville, only to succumb to a late touchdown. So you're starting to see a lot of his imprints on this program, and he's gotten guys out of the portal. He's gotten guys out of the high school ranks that fit his program's DNA, and you're starting to see some progression with that. Now, the next step is, can we win a big game? And we've had some games that we've called big. You know, Maryland came to Scott Stadium, and that was a big game under the lights because we were undefeated and they're a rival, and we lost that game. And Louisville, to an extent, was a big game. Chance to go 3-0 in the ACC for the first time since 2007. This is a big game. I think I was looking at the odds. You always use Vegas to kind of inform you of what the feeling is around a game, or if it's going to be high scoring and low scoring, because usually they've got a good idea. And I looked at the odds, and Virginia is the biggest underdog in the country this year this week when it comes to a Power 4 conference game. So we'll see if the Hoos can win a big one, because, looking back at last year, I don't know if you guys remember, we went on the road in our 6th game of the season. We were 1-5. We went to Carolina. They were top 10. That was our first ever top 10 road victory, beating them as 21-point underdogs. So if we can replicate that, and Tony Elliott would be, back-to-back years of pulling a top 10 road upset, that would be something.
Well, I really like your quarterback, and we'll go with the theme here with Tony Elliott with the boxing gloves here. That goes back to, I think, the Wayne Gallman days. Wayne might have gone through a little bit of a fumbling problem one spring, so Tony's out there with the boxing gloves on trying to knock the ball out. But Tony gives you a puncher's chance. But your quarterback, Calandria, I watched him last year as a freshman, and you could tell, freshman, he had his moments. There were times that you're like, what are you doing, kid? And he still has some of those moments, but he gives you a chance. He's a playmaker. What have you seen out of him so far this year?
I've seen a huge evolution. So you kind of nailed his performance last year, where he would be incredible, a wizard, kind of like Brett Favre. If you think back at like how smaller quarterback would operate. He's sneaky athletic too, and he could keep us in games, but he would make a critical error in some really critical parts of the game. And so far this year, he has shown maturity, and maturity looks different for players. And in his case, maturity to throw the ball out of bounds, maturity to know when to give up on a play and just, cut your losses and not try and scramble in the backfield and get sacked for 20 yards. Maturity to protect the ball in the red zone. maturity to slide. All of these things that he wasn't doing last year that he needs to do this year as the guy. Because remember last year, Tony Muskett was our starter. Tony Muskett was named the starter. He was injured in the first game. As you know, Tony Elliott believes if a player gets injured, they should not lose their starting position and they should get it back when they are healthy. And Tony Muskett was our starter and Anthony Calandria was the fill-in. And he started the year as the third string quarterback, but the second string quarterback left to go play baseball in the fall practice. So Calandria was thrown to the fire and he performed as you would think a freshman would. But he also showed that he's got a lot of talent and a lot of playmaking. And now you sprinkle a little bit of maturity in that, and you've got a quarterback that's capable of hopefully pulling off an upset on Saturday.
And one of the things that's been sprinkled into this offense is Malachi Fields' ability, that big body receiver. Just taking a look at some of his tape before we film this podcast, it's a big body receiver, can make plays in space. And talking to Dabo about it last night, I asked him what's sort of the key to stopping him, and he's just got to stay on top of him. And some of the tasks, I guess, it'll reside with Avion Terrell, like he did against Eric Ayumanor against Stanford. But how does that extra element, what has that been added to this Virginia offense, especially with the guy that you can scramble off rhythm and still find your big body receiver for one of those just gotcha plays?
Yeah, Malachi is a great story. And my color analyst jokes that we've got a quarterback controversy because he's thrown a wide receiver reverse pass in 2 straight games and completed them. So he's 2 for 2 this season. But Malachi's actually, he's a former high school quarterback. And he's from Monticello High School, which is 3 miles away from Scott Stadium here in Charlottesville. And when I'm preparing for this game of Virginia versus Clemson, I always just marvel at your guys' recruiting record. And it's like 5-star, 5-star, 4-star in these huge classes. And then you look at a guy like Malachi Fields, where you guys are game planning for a former 2-star recruit. This is someone who is an absolute monster in the weight room. I think his bench press on the 225 is like 21 or 22. His squat is off of the charts. He's an absolute specimen of an athlete. And then, as you mentioned, he's got the improvisational ability. So if Calandria starts to improvise, he can harken back to when he was a quarterback and what he would have wanted in that situation. He's also a great catcher of the football. So he's got this huge catch radius. He's a wonderful route runner when it comes to third down. He's got a knack for making catches on 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 7 right at the sticks. And then if we can isolate him and get him in the flat, this is one tough player to bring down because he is an absolute load. So he creates a lot of problems, and not many teams have been able to stop him.
Clemson has seen the evolution of the quarterback play, like you were talking about with Anthony Calandria, with Cade Klubnik, that last year, his first full year as a starter, a lot of mistakes. Dabo called them catastrophic mistakes. They were. We've seen that maturity out of him. And now this year, this Clemson offense, 40-plus points in 5 games or 4 out of the last 5 games. So many yards per game. I like this Virginia defense. I know it kind of begins and ends. I like James Jackson, the linebacker. I like Cam Robinson. But Chico Bennett, Jameer Carter, Cam Butler, that defensive line, to me, has really been able to keep Virginia in football games.
Yeah, those guys have been around forever. So your team is old when your defensive tackle Jameer Carter is married. So we got the football poster, and he's got like his arms folded at the front of it, and he's wearing his wedding ring. And you're like, these are grown men. Ja's another guy where, man, that guy works in the weight room, and they don't even let him max out on his squat because it's not safe for the bar. It bends so much. So they make him do max reps, like multiple reps, instead of just a 1-rep max. Our defensive line is very seasoned. One of the reasons why, and I don't think a lot of people who aren't around Virginia's orbit know this. So we obviously had a terrible tragedy 2 years ago that cut our season short. Every player that's petitioned the NCAA that was part of that team has gotten an extra year of eligibility out of that. So we're looking at some players like Cam Butler, who is now in his 7th season. When he transferred here to Virginia, he was here for 1 year. And that was 3 years ago. So he was here for a year. He got this extra year. He also had a redshirt year because of injury. So we've got some guys that have been around for a while, and they're starting to see the fruits of their labor. But 7th, 6th-year guys, Chico Bennett can get up the field. Cam Butler's got a crazy motor, a really intense player. And then Jamir Carter is one of the best defensive tackles in the league, and I truly believe that.
I wanted to circle off of something that David mentioned about the maturity of this Clemson offense. And it's been fascinating when we bring on guests to preview the matchups with this Clemson team, is that it looks different. And then it's one thing for David and I to perch on this podcast and talk about how different things are, but it's one thing for analysts like you around the country to go and say, hey, this is what I've been seeing. So when you've had the chance to dive into Clemson football and study this team, just what is different about this team? And maybe that stands out from 2023 where there's a lot of struggles, 22 where, yes, they were undefeated at this point, but there were definitely cracks in the armor that were going to get exposed.
Just what, talking about Clemson?
Yeah.
We haven't played you guys in a while. I think what was the last one, a COVID game, or and then obviously we had the ACC championship game, but you guys are loaded. I mean, there's no other way around it. So the way I watch my film is I simply go to YouTube, and there's like full games, and then there's also like the highlight reels. And when I watch the opposition the week before, usually like the highlight reels are like 7 or 8 minutes. But when I pull up the Clemson ones, they're like 14 minutes long. You guys have so many highlights. So you guys have playmakers everywhere. We all know that. And I'm excited because Clemson seems like it's back. And this atmosphere that you guys have had in the prime years, we should expect on Saturday. You guys are rolling. This is every bit of a Clemson team that looks as powerful as some of the top ones from the past.
I think Tony was kind of funny this week, and knowing the relationship that he has with Dabo Swinney. And, he said that he's not taking calls or text messages from anybody down here. He's telling family to stay away. He's concentrating on the game. And he said, that he and Dabo may share a laugh or a hug in pregame, and then it'll be the game. And he said, don't think Dabo will take it easy because it's me over here. If he's got a chance to run up the score, he will. I don't think that Dabo would do that to Tony, and I think Tony is a good enough coach that this can be a competitive, good game. I really do. What's it like working with Tony, who is, and I've been working with him, since 2010, I guess, who's he's kind of honest. He's not a double speak coach. Never has been, probably never will be.
Oh, I mean, I can think of a lot of adjectives to describe him. Kind is the first one. He's introspective. He is gentle. He is demanding. So I get to go to practice. I get to sit in his office after practice. I get to host a coach's show with him. And he is every bit of what you want in a head coach, because he can fill all the duties of the position and all the unique responsibilities. So he's someone that can get in front of a bunch of 19, 20, 21-year-olds who are away from home for the first time in their life and being overwhelmed by schoolwork and all the pressures of college athletics, and he can speak to them in their language. And then 2 hours later, he can be in the middle of a donor event and speak to a bunch of millionaires and impress them. He's someone that can volley back and forth between all of those crowds, and that's really important for a college football coach. But just from a human level, he's a kind, genuine, warm person to be around. We have our coaches shows, and I'll listen in on coaches shows from all around the country just to see what others are doing. And I can tell you, almost every single one of them, you can hear the host of the show killing time at the beginning because the head coach is late. They're waiting on the head coach to show up. I've probably done, at this point, 50 some shows with Coach Elliott. I don't think he's ever been later than 10 minutes early. He's always on time and then some. He's just a stand-up person, and he lives what he preaches. He's a person of discipline, of repetition, and everything that he says, David, is really what he means. And I'm thankful for that. He's been great to work with.
You talking about Tony Elliott, something that Swinney said on Tuesday was that he felt like Tony Elliott was destined for that kind of community at Virginia. and what they've had to sort of embrace early in his tenure. But just from that community aspect that Charlottesville has in surrounding this university, just how has Elliott sort of meshed with the populace there, and just sort of how has that community rallied around him, especially seeing the positive returns that he's been able to bring in year 3?
Yeah, well, I think Coach Elliott in his first year on the job was dealt a hand of cards that is more difficult than what any college football coach has ever had to deal with.
Right.
And we had an immense tragedy. And think about just put yourself in his shoes. He's new to the community. He's new to the university. He's been here for roughly 10 months when the tragedy occurred. And suddenly he is, not by his choice, the person that has to lead a university, a community, a city, a town, a broad state through this tragedy. And to see him do it was remarkable. And what he was able to do in a situation where nobody had any experience of how to handle it, and how he handled it has inspired people, and it continues to. So I think he became ours very quickly here by his actions that year, and continues to be so as we move forward.
Well, I can tell you this: everybody here still loves him. The fans still love him. Tamika, the boys, still very much a part of the community here in many ways, and that, I think, speaks volumes to Tony's character. Going back to the game, what are the keys for Virginia to win the big game for Tony Elliott? What are the keys for Virginia to pull off the upset?
Score 60. How many do we need tomorrow or Saturday? Man. Well, Clemson's loaded. I think when I look at data and numbers and trying to find some sort of chink in the armor of Clemson, there's not a lot. But I will say Virginia has been really good in the fourth quarter this year. So I said at the beginning of this podcast, we've been down by double digits in the second half of every game we've played in the ACC. We've erased those deficits to take a lead in every single game that we've played in the ACC. If we can just get it to the fourth quarter and not be overwhelmed. So, even if we're down by 10 in the third quarter, like that might be a win because we've been in that position before and we know how to come back. But you're getting Anthony Calandria, a true sophomore, thrown into the fire. We haven't really experienced an environment like this. Maybe Tennessee and Nissan Stadium, which was a neutral venue, Nissan Stadium last year in Nashville to start the season. But this is going to be unique. And they've been pumping the music at practice. Everybody knows that the environment is going to be loud and electric. Now it's a matter of how we handle it. And if we can just hold serve for the first couple quarters and then see if we can do something special in the fourth.
And if Elliott gets the upset, it'll be another top 10 victory on the road. And I think, for me, I think that's all I have. David, is there anything else you want to add with John here while we still have him?
Yeah, one personal question. You're a University of Virginia graduate. Your wife is. You've been to Nashville. You've done soccer and lacrosse and everything else. But what is it like to go home and do play-by-play for your university and have your wife be a part of the community and just have a place that is so near and dear to your heart, be your job, your work as it would be?
It's amazing. I mean, it's just like Coach Elliott probably when he was coaching at Clemson of like, I get to do this at my alma mater. There's nothing like it. And we love this community. We live right in the middle of town. And we love being part of a university. There's such a good relationship, Charlottesville with the university. It's all kind of one together, probably in the same way that Clemson is. I mean, I wouldn't want it any different. I lived in Nashville, and Vanderbilt's in Nashville. It's not a college town. This is very much a college town. So I can't imagine doing it anywhere else. I think that would be really hard for me to get as excited and enthusiastic about going to work if I wasn't doing it for my alma mater, because the pride is just overflowing every time I get the mic. And we love being part of the community. My wife and I are going to the dining hall tonight. That's how much we're embedded in the Virginia community, that we're eating with the students. So it's great. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Awesome stuff. And safe travels, John, on the way to Clemson this weekend. We'll be looking forward to seeing you there. And guys, thanks for once again tuning in to another episode of the Orange Crush podcast with David Hood alongside myself, Grayson, Mann. We got plenty of fun stuff as we really ramp up this week of Virginia preview leading up to Saturday morning. We'll have the noon kick and much more. We want to thank our sponsors. You can see them flashed on the banners down below. Herb Tyler of Clemson Chick-fil-A and Lisa Nason with Nason Accounting. We really want to thank John for his time. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and take care.